Thank you. Let's start. Hello, everyone. Salam, namaste, adab, and welcome at Indian Diaspora, Washington, D.C. Today, we have three very well-known speakers. Um, it is, and the topic is ideological contestations in India, secular plural versus majoritarian. You know, Indian situation since 10 years. This is the contestation that is going on all the time in India. And these three individuals are known for taking one side, that is the secular plural side, as opposed to the present regime of majoritarian uh, dispensation. So uh, Dr. Purvanand, who is a professor in Delhi University, professor of Hindi, is a well-known civil rights activist. He is a scholar and academic. He writes very frequently on these issues as well as other issues. He is very much involved in the political arena also, appears on Wire, especially in debates, and Indian Express as a writer, a columnist, and he has written 4 books on different issues. And he is very frequently engaged in issues like riots and Modi's abuse of press, free press, and all those other related issues. He is unfortunately not yet here, but he should be, he will be. And Sunita Vishwanath, the other speaker, is very well known in the diaspora as well as in India. And in a very brief time of 15 years, I guess, she has made an impact on pro-activism in the civil rights field, especially her foundation, Hindus for Human Rights, is very well known in taking on the present regime in India. And recently, I was quite pleasantly surprised to see her big article just came in Time magazine, I guess, on Manipuri's situation. While the Prime Minister of India is totally silent, the rest of the leadership silent, we, the diaspora, became a voice here, and Sunita is leading the charge. That is really so nice to see. She is the co-founder of not only one Hindus for Human Rights, she also founded Sadhana, and a women organization also, especially focusing on Afghani women's problems. And of course, Tushar Gandhi Sahab is the great-grandson of Mahatma Gandhi. He's the director of Gandhi Research Foundation, and as well as the founding and managing trustee of Mahatma Gandhi Foundation in Vadodara, I guess, he's functioning from Bombay, Mumbai. Presently, he is here in the USA. He's joining from Rochester, I guess. And he has also appeared in 2 movies, one in Hey Ram on Gandhiji, and the other was, I think, in Sangam, Road to Sangam. And he has written a book also on Mahatma Gandhi's Let's Kill Mahatma. So all these speakers are very well known, very vocal, very articulate, and they are going to put their views in their own way. So I've given them equal time, and I'll invite Sunita first, followed by Apurvanand Sahab, if he joins, but in the meantime, and at the end, Tushar Gandhi. So welcome you all, and Sunita Vishwanath, please.
Thank you, Razipai. Thank you all. Good morning. I'm in the high desert of New Mexico, in Taos, New Mexico, and I'm delighted to join you from here. I'm so happy to be, especially with Tusharji, and I hope he joins, Apurvanandji. Really excited to share that while Raj Mohanji is also here, He was our first advisory board member in Hindus for Human Rights. And Apurvananji, by the way, is the newest advisory board member. So in many ways, this is family, but especially because two of our advisory boards members are here. So 2023, this year has been intense, to say the least, for us in Hindus for Human Rights. On the one hand, our work has had incredible traction and we've increased in our visibility. And I feel that as an organization, both as individuals, staff and board members, but also as the organization, we've really matured in this year. On the other hand, and I'm saying this really from a personal and reflective perspective, rather than an organizational one, there's this constant reminder of the grim reality of how dark things are, how just pretty dire everything is that we are facing, and especially these continuous setbacks that come in the form of these over-the-top global accolades for Narendra Modi, while the atrocities back home are just increasing and going through the roof. And for us in Hindus for Human Rights, this stony silence of people in the Hindu community, either the people in the Hindu community support Modi and have their reasons for doing so, or they just are silent and don't take a stand. And all of this makes me think Hindus for Human Rights just had our 4th anniversary, our 4th birthday. And we're about to go into our annual strategic planning retreat. And so we're in a mode of reflection and gearing up for the path ahead. And I just feel that there is something very key that we are not doing that would make a huge difference. And I think we are close to it, grasping for it, almost see it, but it keeps eluding us. And maybe, Razibhai, thanks for the opportunity to just think about this and share with you. This every day in HFHR is a work day. And so this is for me an opportunity to just sort of brainstorm with all of you, and then everything we learn goes into the work. So what have we worked on in 2023? Well, so much, but the highlights, the year, as I think you all know, started for us with our Prema Yatra, our pilgrimage of love to India, to search for and then connect with each other and organize progressive and Hindu religious leaders who stand against the hatred and division, who stand against the calls for genocide that we saw, for instance, in Haridwar in December 2021, who do not want India to be a Hindu Rashtra, those kinds of Hindu religious leaders. And we have found about 20. If there are 20, there will be 20,000. There will be many more. We just don't know them. They are isolated, and it's a risky time to.
Sunita, forgive me for interrupting. Your voice, can you raise the voice, please?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that any better?
Better if you are closer. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. It seems. Okay. Try.
Okay. And I'll speak up.
Yeah.
So I was talking about the Prema Yatra, and just I don't want to say the names of the Hindu religious leaders for their own security, but as our friends, I would like you to know that they are all connecting with each other into a network that has a name and will have a united voice, a Hindu religious leaders' voice of authority against Hindutva, and I'm so excited about that. And there's something to be learned from the fact that a group abroad went to India with so much love and yearning, and showed up in ashrams to talk to people. People appreciated that. The swamis and sadhvis appreciated that, and are taking up the charge in any way that they can. So stay tuned for that work to be announced at some time. And then our work around the visits of Rahul Gandhi and then Narendra Modi to the United States in recent couple of months was all consuming. And we had incredible policy and media wins. And we've made so many new and exciting connections for the path ahead, for the advocacy ahead. The leadership we're taking, because in all of this, we have really taken leadership. And so that leadership has led to attacks on me personally and on the organization by senior echelons of the BJP. But we are holding strong, and we consider these attacks sacred badges of honor, and they're proof of the impact we are having. Of course, if we were in India, it would be scarier, but we're abroad and we have that little bit of safety that comes from not, they cannot physically, at least I don't think they can physically attack us. And the online attacks there, if you close your computer, you don't see them. So we feel we're holding strong. We are not deterred by these attacks. So the topic of our webinar today is to explore the concept of secularism and pluralism as opposed to the majoritarianism in the Indian context. And as I thought about this topic, I went into a kind of a personal place. So bear with me. This is an important aspect of the ideological contestations we face, with a clash between the secular plural perspective and the Hindutva viewpoint. So I recently watched the two Karan Thapar interviews, maybe some of you did too. One was with a Muslim journalist about what it's like to be a Muslim in Modi's India. And the other was with a Hindu civil servant on what it's like to be a secular Hindu in Modi's India. At first, I was overjoyed to see someone other than HFHR speaking out on the need for Hindus to step up and speak up and take back democracy. And they were good and important conversations. And I am really glad that Karan Thapar had these two conversations. But as I thought about it afterwards, I found myself wondering, why did the Muslim journalist feel no need to qualify his Muslimness with the word secular, whereas the Hindu civil servant kept using the word secular Hindu? What is it like to be a secular Hindu in India? Why could the question not have been, what is it like to be a Hindu in Modi's India? It is as if secular Hindu is meant to distinguish from Hindutva Hindu. But I ask myself and all of you and Karan Thapar, why do we have to think of it that way? Of the 80% or so of India that is Hindu, of course, some would identify as secular Hindus or people born Hindu who are not religious and do not identify that way, etc. But in my experience anyway, the vast majority of the Hindu majority would just say they're Hindu. And we need that majority to tell us what it's like living in Modi's India. That is the majority we need to reach, listen to, engage with, care about. Inclusivity and active engagement with the Hindu majority, we believe in Hindus for Human Rights, are vital in our movements to save Indian democracy. It is imperative that we listen to and engage with the perspectives of the Hindu majority to truly understand the challenges faced in Modi's India and the parallel in the diaspora as well. And so the events that we are holding, for instance, Desh Videsh series in the Bay Area, are envisioned as spaces for people to come together who don't already agree with each other and see if we can create safe space where no question is a bad question or a silly question, and people can join wherever they are and be brought along in a conversation together. That's not happening in many spaces at all. We cannot say we care about Indian democracy and then not pay any attention to the majority of the population. It seems so obvious. It's akin to Hillary Clinton dismissing Trump supporters as deplorables. It not only shows a lack of compassion and care, it's also very bad strategy. Both Nikhil Mandalaparty, my colleague, and I were on the Karan Thapar show in the past, and we both identified as Hindu without qualifiers. Are we secular? Of course we are. There just isn't a contradiction. At the heart of what I'm saying is this. I believe that all of us working to save Indian democracy must, sincerely from our hearts accept and respect that there are people who are Hindu, people who religiously, culturally, philosophically self-identify as Hindu. Those people belong in our movements to save India. And in fact, our movements don't have any chance of succeeding without them. You may think this is obvious, but I can tell you, as the person leading HFHR, almost every day I have to explain to someone why we are Hindus for human rights and not secular Hindus for human rights or Indians for human rights. People in India and the diaspora, Hindus and non-Hindus, find our organization and our mission strange and counterintuitive and sometimes offensive. I firmly believe that until we create movements that are clear about their pro-democracy and pro-human rights stand and unhesitatingly welcome all parts of Indian society, including self-identifying Hindus, we will continue to fail. I would like to give you a few examples so you better understand my position. At an interfaith event in Madurai, which I helped organize, all the non-Hindus in the room spoke about their concerns about Indian democracy. The people with Hindu names instead engaged in a debate about whether Hinduism exists as a religion and their hesitation about identifying as Hindus. So, of course, everybody has the right to identify however they want. This isn't about proselytizing. But what I said to the group was, things are in a terrible, dire strait in India. And while you are debating about whether Hinduism exists, there is no such debate on the right. India is inching closer and closer to a Hindu Rashtra. Then I was at a village in Panchgani, and an NGO took me and some others to visit villagers who they had trained to engage in what they called quiet time, basically the practice of quiet reflection or meditation. The villagers, in this particular village, the villagers were clearly Hindu, and they greeted us with garlands and tikas, and we all sat in an open space right next to a Hindu temple. Each villager was invited to speak, and they spoke beautifully about the benefits of quiet time. One had stopped fighting with their sister-in-law, one had a much happier marriage, several had decided to go and clean up nearby Dalit villages. After some time, I raised my hand and I asked, "Where do you do your quiet time?" And the first villager said, pointing to the temple where we were sitting, "In the temple." And then one by one, they all said, "In the temple." So in effect, quiet time for this village was prayer or meditation in the Hindu temple. But the NGO was characterizing it in this non-religious way. It's a question we should think about. In Kerala, a colleague and I spent a day with Dalit women artists working with bamboo. We talked, we played with their children, we ate together, and we even danced together. And then at about 5 o'clock in the evening, mid-conversation, all the women suddenly disappeared. And I asked our hosts, leaders in that NGO that was running those operations, I asked them, where did the women go? And they said, oh, they have family obligations, the workday is over, they're tired, that sort of thing. And I pressed quite a bit before it was finally admitted to me that all these women had gone to the temple. Why was that something that these folks felt that they needed to hide? I can keep going. Perhaps the most awful example was when my goddaughter was having a Zoom interview from my place in Brooklyn to intern at an NGO in Bhopal. When she mentioned that she had volunteered with Sadhana and Hindus for Human Rights, the person interviewing her, who was a Hindu by birth, said, "Don't talk to me about that. All Hindus should drink poison and die." She was horrified, and I was particularly horrified because this was an activist in Bhopal for whom drinking poison and dying is a daily reality for people who are still suffering from the atrocity that happened in Bhopal. These are real life anecdotes, and I haven't spoken about these before in a public forum. Hindus for Human Rights stands categorically against caste and Hindutva and every form of hatred. But we also defend our right to be Hindu, to celebrate the vast diversity of Hindu traditions, to fight the atrocity of caste, and to rescue our faith from the clutches of what really are monsters. Hinduism is an inherently pluralistic religion. Unlike most major religions, we don't have one book, one supreme leader, one path. One's dharma or religious path is a very individual expression of faith. In fact, Lord Krishna says in the Gita, it is better to do one's own dharma imperfectly than another's dharma perfectly. Across the global Hindu community, then, there are as many ways to be Hindu as there are Hindus. The diversity of Hinduism is a direct reflection of the diversity of India. HFHR celebrates that diversity, and Hindutva flattens it, erases it. By embracing these values, we can ensure the preservation and enhancement of our democratic ideals. And just to conclude, a beloved cousin of mine, who also works to defend Indian democracy, just the other day, asked me to articulate a theory of change for HFHR so that he could understand why we needed to call ourselves Hindus for Human Rights. I still owe him that theory of change, but what I might actually do is to ask for his theory of change, for challenging Hindutva and caste and saving Indian democracy without engaging Hindus, the kind of Hindu that's okay calling himself or herself Hindu without any qualifier. And that's the question I invite all of us to engage in a deep way.
Quite short, Sunita. So Dr. Puranand is trying to join. Somehow he is unable, but he keeps on joining. I do not know what is the technical reason. So obviously he will be able to join at the end. So let's now hear our Tushar Gandhi Sahab, and then after that, if he joins, then he will be the last person. Tushar ji, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. I hope my audio is
very well,
because it was very difficult to hear Sunita ji speaking. I don't know, I may have the problem at my end, but the audio was very faint. And I really had to strain to hear her. So I hope everybody can hear. My concern today is that more and more I see that people of our spectrum, our belief, our ideology, are speaking inside echo chambers, while the fanatics are penetrating into the entire Indian community and, speaking at the top of their voice and being heard more and more.
Tusharji, I'm just interrupting you. There's somebody quite horrible here who's very offensive in the chat. I wonder if we can get rid of that person.
I'll take care of it.
I shall take care of, maybe stop the chat then.
Yeah, I did stop the chat.
This is something that we'll have to live with, because that's what I was saying, that these fanatics, they infiltrate every space possible and have not left anything, whereas our space is shrinking in India today, and we are also too habituated to about speaking in echo chambers amongst our own people, preaching to the congregation, sort of. And I think that is where the other side has gained so much credibility and legitimacy. I don't agree with this term majoritarianism, because in India today, what we are seeing is a brutal form of majoritarian that borders on the rule of the mob, because it's almost like, people standing with a gun to your head, making you fall in line, kind of a situation, and they are being officially patronized and promoted in a very insidious manner. So I think the danger to India today is more this mentality of the brutal mob dictating terms to everybody and everything and getting away with it. The problem is that they're getting away with it. The other issue also I have with this nobilization of Hinduism is that, we like to call Hinduism as being plural and all that. And even my great-grandfather praised Hinduism as being plural. But the Hinduism that we see in recent time, where is the humility? Where is the humanitarianism? We don't see much of it. There's so many atrocities that keep being reported day in and day out, and the responses to it are getting fainter and fainter and fainter every day. And it seems as if the people who justify it, I was just writing about this, that a people, a society, a civilization is not demonized by the actions as much as it is demonized by the apathy towards the brutal takeover of that religion, the silence of the majority, the silent acceptance of that as being an acceptable behavior. And that is what is really endangering us today. This is very recent, horrifying episode of that brute urinating on somebody just because he considered that person to be subhuman. And the response that has come so far to such a terrible, horrible, obscene action is shocking, and it exposes that our hearts are dead. We are not bothered about such things. We don't care about such things. And in the face of these kind of horrible actions, to still pat our backs and say we are the most plural religion on earth, I think is hypocrisy. I don't subscribe to that anymore. I feel that the deterioration and the dehumanizing in Hinduism has reached a level which is alarming. अगर हिंदू को खतरा है तो उसके खुद के रवैये से ज्यादा है बाहर से मुझे दिखता नहीं है, क्योंकि जिस तरह से हम लोग आज अमानवीयता को अपने ही दामन में लेके चल रहे हैं, और we're not bothered about these. And then to cite these examples, yes, in villages people go to temples, that's the only place they can go to, but even there are hierarchies, and it is these people who go every evening to the temples and sit and talk nicely and feel peace, are the ones who are easily converted into those murderous mobs of people. And that is what should be really worrying us, is how easy it is for these fanatics to turn absolutely normal human beings into monsters, into complete demons at a click of a finger. It's like, we used to see those films where the hypnotist clicked his finger and your personality went changed all of a sudden. And it's in Indian society, the emergence of the beast is becoming that easy. Initially, I was told that we should talk about the post-Karnataka scenario. The post-Karnataka scenario to me feels that India has entered a very dangerous era of its existence since independence. We are almost at the same time when during independence, the partition happened and the division of the country happened, because at that time, basically it was just the division of territories. Today, it's the division of hearts and minds, and people are accepting those divisions. And during the campaign in Karnataka, for once in his lifetime, Amit Shah spoke the truth when he wagged his finger and warned the people of Karnataka that if Congress is elected, they will see a spate of communal violence erupting. For once, in his honesty, Amit Shah was telling the people that the violence will not happen because the Congress is in power, but the violence will happen because the BJP is in the opposition and irresponsible and free to act responsibly. And we are seeing that manifest itself in many places in India, in Manipur in particular, where it is now proven that it is state-sponsored arson and violence that is being allowed to continue. And our prime minister is completely not bothered. He talks about, he'll go and criticize Mamta and Trinamool Congress in Bengal because of the violence in the polls. And I'm not justifying the manner in which Trinamool conducts elections in Bengal, but he will take that opportunity, and all the BJP apologists will harp on the fact that the recently concluded panchayat elections where the BJP was completely routed. They've already started pointing out to how their people were killed and how they were terrorized and how the bullies of Trinamool Congress rode rampant over everybody, and yet not a single word for the ongoing violence and arson and killings in Manipur, which is now turning international, unfortunately, because suddenly it has acquired a Christian identity, the whole thing. And unfortunately, we are allowing that hijacking of the whole thing to happen and be trivialized, because as soon as that label of Christian comes about and the Christian countries start criticizing it, it gives a justification to the Hindus to say, look, Hinduism is under siege. The others, the religions that have always oppressed us have got into action and they are all targeting us. And Modi becomes more powerful. The unfortunate thing is that every time they are about to be exposed, they get these kind of opportunities to wriggle out of the hole and play the victim card. And that's what they're going to do as soon as Modi comes back from France. And they'll start targeting the European Union and the European Parliament, discussing Manipur and Sonia Gandhi's Christian origins. That is where it all ends, and that is what we all accept. The problem is not that they accuse us of that. The problem is that the Indian society today accepts all those justifications and accusations and believes them to be true. And that is where we are losing out continuously. And that is where I think this whole justification of, how Hinduism, the true Hinduism, is so benevolent and so humanitarian and things should stop now, because the face of Hinduism that we are facing today is the face that is barbarous. And we must admit that. Yes, I admit that there was a very humanitarian soul to Hinduism at one time. That is no longer true. And that is no longer true of all radicalized religions and all the radical factions in religions that are becoming dominant the worldwide. This emergence and power of radical behavior is not confined to Hinduism. It's more, it becomes more apparent because of the percentage which is infected by this virus. But I see it all over. I see it in the rise of the extreme right in Europe. I see it in the Trumpism becoming more and more popular by the day in the US. I see it all over in Islam, in Islamic countries also, where the so-called the benevolent face is being smothered by the radicals who are taking center stage everywhere. So it is a global kind of a phenomenon that we are seeing. But I don't care what they do in Saudi Arabia. I care what is happening in India, in my country, to my people. And I have no answers to give to Inder Meghwal, who was killed just because he had the audacity of touching a upper caste teacher's water pot to quench his thirst. I have no answer to the little girl who was brutally abused and murdered in Una. I have no answers to give to the Adivasi who had to face that humiliation of somebody peeing on his face, just so that a video could be made viral. And remember this, it was done so that the video could be shot and put on social media and they get notoriety for some time, and they spectacularly succeeded in doing that. Even people who I consider of secular liberal opinion, the first question they were asking is, where can we get that video to see? Why did we have to see that horrible act being performed? Why wasn't just the news about this happening in today's time enough for us to be filled with revulsion? We should be asking this question to ourselves. Unfortunately, we are not, because we also have succumbed to that morbidity of seeing things for ourselves. Do we have to watch all these brutal, vicious, savage events to believe that we are becoming like that? Doesn't that show our affinity towards those kind of events taking place? Shouldn't that be something that worries us? The poison that is contaminating us, changing our psyches. I think that is what we should all be worried about. Post Karnataka, there is going to be a groundswell. I don't know if that groundswell is going to continue into 24 or before 24 or in 24. Once again, it will be Modi nahi to kaun, and that will win the elections. Maybe the last elections Indian democracy has for a long time. That is what we should be worried about. These small victories that are happening on the way over there, maybe just acting as a wake-up call for the fanatics to become more fanatical, gain more acceptance for their viciousness, their savagery, their poison, and poison more minds. I think we need to get out of our echo chambers, go into society and counter these brutes at every nukkad, every corner, every basti, at every locality that they are infiltrating. This battle now has to get onto the streets. It might be a bloody battle. It may not be a Gandhian fight any longer because we waited too long. But that, unfortunately, will have to be fought. And that is what we should all be thinking about. Can we save our nation from that kind of chaos and complete fragmentization? Post Karnataka, that becomes the greatest challenge to all of us. I'm sorry, I don't have anything positive to say. I don't have anything in praise of Hinduism today to say. And I don't have anything in praise of any religion. I think the time has come when we have to shed the religious identity and try. I am considering officially becoming an atheist. I was never ever an atheist, but I think the time has come when I would have to become a declared atheist and completely foursquare where all these religious disguises that we wear to hide the brute that is becoming dominant in all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tusharji. The situation is like Professor Apurvanand really desperately tried 4 or 5 times. There is some technical issue, so he cannot join, and he has sort of given up. So we have to make up that time. It was, I mean, he came so many times, but this time I don't know what happened to his situation. So I would, because you both took not much time, I mean, rather you can continue if you want, but I'm requesting, there are a couple of very senior thinkers here, scholars here. So I am raising my voice, I mean, loudly I'm asking whether Professor Rajmohan Gandhi can come and say for 4 or 5 minutes. Professor Mridula Mukherjee is here, Suchita Mahajan is here, all these senior level scholars and activists. So if any of them can come up to take that part, and then we can enter into question and answer. Rajmohan Sahab, if you are willing to, or Suchita ji, if you are willing to, or Mridula ji, if you are willing to, or Vinod Mubai Sahab, if you are willing to. Professor Vinod Mubai.
कोई नहीं बोलेगा तो मैं बोल दूं.
जी, आपका नाम मैं ले रहा हूं. Are you willing to? Aditya ji is here. Okay. So any of you raise the hand that you are willing, and we can make co-host and give that slot of Professor Apurvanand.
I am made co-host to all of those.
And nobody is coming forward?
Razi Bhai, at some point, can I respond to Tusharji?
Yeah, that Sunita, can we do it in the question answer or no?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm asking Professor Aditya Mukherjee, or is better whatever you decide. Come on, please. Sorry for folks. Sorry, this never happened, but Apurvanandji is unable to come.
Razi Bhai, I would much like to hear Rajmohan Gandhi Sahab and Professor Mridula Mukherjee, since they have joined. Agar mumkin
Okay.
wo log aa jayein. I will just say a few things after them if the time is there.
मृदुला जी, आपका ज्यादा आपकी इम्पोर्टेंस यहाँ पे है. आप आदित्य जी को नहीं लोग पूछ रहे हैं इस वक्त, आप ही के बारे में. सॉरी. जी जी जी.
दोनों बोल लेंगे, कोई
टाइम को ले लीजिए, 5-6 मिनट के अंदर कुछ.
नहीं, shorter than that. I just want to react to one, of course. I think the spirit with which Tushar Gandhi ji spoke is very much, I think he expressed the sentiment and the feelings which all of us who are deeply concerned about what's going on in India, how we are feeling. I mean, I think his sense of a great concern and almost sometimes bordering on despondency is something that keeps coming back to us very strongly these days. And all the incidents which he talked about, which he shared, are so gruesome and so horrible that it is indeed, we only can hang our heads in shame that it has come to this. And when we also find people coming up and defending them, I think that makes things even worse. You know, there's no doubt about what he said. I also want to just bring in what the position which Sunita was taking on the issue of recognizing those who have, as she said, a self-conscious Hindu identity, and how it's necessary to talk to them, to approach them. I completely agree with her, but I think the kind of critique which Tusharji made of her position is also very relevant. I think that it really, this assertion of Hinduism as a superior religion in some way, the way we say it's not a religion of the book, it's more plural, all those things we've said, it has been said in our traditions. But as Tusharji said, today, we wonder whether all that is actually making sense when the reality of what Hindutva has done to Hinduism is starkly before us. I think the time to also be self-critical, to introspect and look at it more critically, not look at the religion more critically, that we are not talking here as religious reformers, but look at what has happened in the name of Hindu religion. And in fact, how it is being deformed by those who are speaking in its name, that needs to be emphasized. Though I completely agree with her that there's no way that we can neglect the majority of the Indian population, which is Hindu, and among those, the vast majority who self-identify as Hindu. Of course, we have to reach out to them. There's just no way that we can't reach out to them. But it's not necessary that we do it from a position of being Hindus. Here's where I'd like to come in. I think learning from our freedom struggle, different people, different leaders, different ideologues spoke from different ideological and, what should I say, life positions. Gandhiji certainly identified himself, as she says, self-identified himself as a Hindu, as even a Sanatani Hindu. But he was also very critical of Hinduism. He was a reformer. He said very clearly that as far as any tenet, anything negative, he said, if untouchability, for example, you can show me that it is there in the Shastras, then I will reject the Shastras. I will not say I justify untouchability because it is there in the Shastras. He said, I will subject the Shastras to the same principle of rationality to which he said, I will subject the Quran. So I will no more accept irrationality from the Hindu tradition as I would not accept from the Islamic tradition. So while self-identifying as a Hindu, he was also highly critical, and he spent all his life actually fighting against what he saw as the grossest and the gravest abuse within Hinduism, which was the practice of untouchability. Whether we agree with his methods or not, that's a very different story. But within the freedom struggle, there were a host of other leaders. Jawaharlal Nehru, for example, Subhash Bose, for example, Bhagat Singh, for example, and even within the Congress, there are hosts of other leaders who didn't, not that they denied or didn't talk about being Hindu, but they didn't speak from the vantage point of being Hindus. They spoke as, like she was very critical, Sunita, of those who identify themselves, self-identify as secular Hindus. Because that's what your position is. I think what's important is that you're honest about where you are. If you are a self-consciously secular Hindu, assertively so, there's nothing wrong in identifying yourself as that. Just there's nothing wrong in identifying yourself as a secular Muslim. Because there are fundamentalist Muslims, there are Kattar Muslims, and there are Kattar Hindus, there are Kattar Christians. So I don't think it's a problem making your position clear. So I have no quarrel with Sunita's position, which is that I'm identifying myself as a Hindu and I'm speaking as a Hindu to other Hindus and to other non-Hindus. But there is also space for those across the spectrum who can argue similar positions, but from different self-identities. And that doesn't make it any... And the thing is, I don't think Jawaharlal Nehru appealed less to the ordinary Hindu than did Gandhiji, or did Patel, or did Subhash Bose, just because they didn't identify themselves as Sanatani Hindus as Gandhiji did. Because they were responding also, all human beings are complex. And the same Hindu is also responding to something in Nehru, something in Subhash, and something in Gandhi. So I think all these different positions from which the important point is to struggle against whatever you call it, now the fashionable term is majoritarianism. We were brought up on the term communalism. That's what our freedom struggle taught us. Call it what it is. Communalism, which is a divisive ideology, which is against the nation, which actually divides people and puts them at loggerheads. But it doesn't matter whatever word you use. You can say we are fighting against Hindutva, we are fighting against majoritarianism. We can do it from various vantage points, as long as our objective is clear that we are against any misuse of religion for political ends to advance political agendas which are regressive, which are reactionary, which are fascist, however much we define it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Aditya ji, are you going to add something into that? Or
If I would rather hear Professor Rajmohan Gandhi, but
जी,
if he doesn't speak,
आप ये रिक्वेस्ट करें उनसे, मैं करके देख लिया, he is there.
मैं बोलने को तैयार हूँ।
जी जी जी, आइए, thank
wonderful.
you so much. जी,
मुझे समझ में नहीं आता कि मैं अंग्रेजी में बोलूँ या हिंदी में बोलूँ। खैर,
मिक्स कर दीजिए।
मिक्स करूँगा। First of all, I would like to thank everyone who has spoken this morning or evening, wherever all of us are. And I thank all of you for organizing this conversation. I was very struck by what everyone has said. And as Mridulaji has just now said, there was so much to appreciate in what every single one has uttered. I have complaints about many people, many governments, many individuals, sometimes the way religion is expressed. But sometimes my biggest, this is something that I'm very hesitant to say, but my biggest shikayat, my biggest complaint is against the Almighty. Because I happen to believe that there is an Almighty. Now, I'm not saying that I believe it as a Hindu, although yes, I do think of myself as a Hindu, but I also think of myself as a human being. And I believe that there is an Almighty. He's very slow at times, he's very amazing at times. He's great, he's forgiving, but he does take his own time. And I'm absolutely unhappy. I was hoping, changing the subject a little bit, I was hoping that this Ons Jabeur from Tunisia would win the Wimbledon title. And that would have given such a great uplift to those of us who want dislike of certain people to diminish. Because Muslims around the world are being attacked. And Ons Jabeur from Tunisia, who's an Arab, who's a Muslim woman, if she had won the Wimbledon, it would have been a great morale booster for all of us. Lekin wo bhi nahi hua aaj. Aaj, this remarkable Czech woman has defeated her. So this again is my shikayat to the Almighty. Why is he delaying justice? Why is he delaying the good things that we are all hoping for? But at the same time, while I admit my unhappiness, my disappointment, but I will not admit that that I am without hope. No, sir, no, madam. This is a very tough situation in India. It's a very tough situation in many parts of the world. There's so much we can blame Christianity for, Islam for, Hinduism for, but what about Buddhism? What's happening in Burma today, Myanmar today, or even in Sri Lanka today? Other countries, Cambodia was a Buddhist country. How has the Buddhist world behaved? So do we attack Buddhism? Do we attack Islam? Do we attack Hinduism? Do we attack Christianity? The European nations call themselves Christian. What did they do in the last century? What is the United States doing even today? Where are the Christians who are fighting for justice and equality? Where are the Muslims fighting for justice and equality? Where are the Hindus and the Buddhists fighting for justice and equality? This is a global battle. And while we are human beings and we are disappointed, we face setbacks, but we also have incredible examples from history. that reversals have taken place in country after country after country, and they will again take place. I have lived long enough. I'm older than Mridula and Aditya, and much older than Tushar, much older than Sunita. I lived in that time. In the in the 40s and the 50s, when we had so much hope and so much confidence and faith, not that Hinduism was wonderful or Islam was wonderful, but that the good forces in the world can triumph. Don't we know what happened in 47 in all parts of India, and especially in Punjab and elsewhere, of course, Bengal too? But how did we, wasn't it amazing how we recovered? Isn't it true that the Gandhi assassination brought about an incredible change, at least for some time? Isn't it true that Nehru and Patel and Azad and so many others helped create an Ambedkar? I mean, can we believe it? With all our history, with all our present day brutality, shameful brutality that Tushar described? By the way, let me say that I was very deeply stirred by Tushar. His utter honesty, his utter frankness, I became so proud of him, of my nephew. I expect great things from you, Tushar. And incidentally, you be wise also. I don't want you to go tomorrow to a street fight in Mumbai or wherever. You are needed for a good long time. And everyone here today who's listening is needed we need patience, we need wisdom, we need passion, we need confidence. Yes, we can't say that because this has happened, therefore this will happen, that Karnataka was good and therefore, yes, we can defeat them in 2024. We might not. The Wimbledon final was not the end all and be all, and the 2024 elections are not the end all and be all. Either we ourselves, or those we love, our children, grandchildren, and if we have no children or grandchildren, others we love and their children and grandchildren, they will fight. They will fight. In all the countries I have named, Afghanistan, India, and Pakistan. Can we talk about the world today without feeling sad about the situation in Pakistan? I feel as deeply for Pakistan as I feel for India. I feel for Sri Lanka. I feel for Bangladesh. And yes, China has great difficulties with India and we have with them. But I feel also for the people of China. So Tushar, Sunita, all of you, and all of you, Razi Bhai, you and your friends, the incredible group that meets regularly, week after week after week after. You think that these energies, this solidarity will go to waste? Yes, the Almighty takes his time. He is slow. He is often irritatingly slow. He produces disappointment after disappointment. But I believe not only in the Almighty, I believe in the goodness of many human beings. Take Hindus for human rights. In such a short time, by the way, it's fantastic how in India people feel, those who don't want democracy and equality to succeed. They think Hindus for Human Rights is a phenomenal, hugely funded, huge force worldwide. Well, it is a huge force of a few people, of not so many supporters, but it's a huge force because its idea is absolutely sound. Equal rights, equality, also mutual love, mutual respect. Humanity is one. Hindus can say this. Hindus can say this as Hindus. Hindus can say this as just human beings. Muslims can say this. Christians can say this. Jews can say. And by the way, I'm not forgetting Palestine and what has recently happened. So much oppression has been allowed by the Almighty for such a long, long time. But I am not giving up my faith either in human beings or in the Almighty, and I certainly am inspired by the wonderful group amidst whom I am present today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was so full of passion and emotion, and taking on Almighty, that became very challenging now. So Tushar, just remember that Almighty is all the time over our head and probably delaying the good decisions for us. Aditya ji, we have time, and this conversation has changed, has become in a different format now. So I bear all the audience, please, that if we can get the good wisdoms coming out of these senior scholars and activists, then we will be very benefited very much. So Aditya ji, if you want to take your 5 minutes, please.
Firstly, I'm so glad that Rajmohan ji spoke up. I mean, it is always, I've learned a lot from him over the last half a century almost. So it is indeed very important that he spoke up. It was great to hear Tushar ji and Sunita. I totally agree with what Rajmohan ji said on many aspects. You know, when Tushar ji was being despondent and he talked about we only talking in our echo chambers, I do not agree with that. We must continue to talk in our echo chambers when nobody is talking. I think what Razi Saab is doing week after week, even if 50 or 100 people are listening, is extremely important. As Rajmohan ji said, what Sunita is doing is extremely important. Again, if we look at from our history, American history and Indian history, it has often been just 1 or 2 people who hung on for a long period of time, and it made transformational changes. So this is, and Gandhiji would repeatedly say that, you know, that resistance, even if it is of one person, is important. So I think we mustn't, because this often leads to cynicism. I mean, as a teacher, we have known a lot of young people take this argument to say, ki kya fayda hai? We are only talking to each other, therefore they have to stop talking. I think we need not do that. We must continue to blaze on. Secondly, again, while totally agreeing with Tusharji, we are sitting in India and witness to the horror that is happening to our country, undoubtedly. Yet I do not think that the only answer is probably going to be a bloody answer. I do not think so. I do not think going to the streets must necessarily be a bloody one. I mean, if anything, if you even witness the Bharat Jodo Yatra, after all, it was saying the exact opposite of what is happening in the country. Tushar Gandhi was himself part of that yatra. They were talking of love. They were talking about against hatred. They were talking against division. They were talking, compassion with the poor. They were talking women's rights. And, there was no bloodshed because of that. There is still space. And we must extend that space as much as possible and not be diffident. I think the role of the intelligentsia is critical here. People like Sunita ji, people like Rajmohan Gandhi, I think, are making a big difference. It enables a large number of younger people who do not dare speak up. You do not know how much courage it gives them. One never knows when they will speak up. But unless some people continue to speak up, that space will close down. Lastly, I would say, again, going from the history of our freedom struggle and what Rajmohan ji referred to, that was at the top of my mind, that if we could handle 1946 to 48, a Holocaust-like situation, millions dying, millions becoming homeless, the father of the nation being murdered, and if that could be overcome within 3 years and hold a peaceful election where the Indian people overwhelmingly, 94% of the Indian people did not vote for a counterpart of Pakistan in India, that is a Muslim Pakistan and a Hindu India. They did not. Only the the votaries of Hindu Rashtra got 6% of the votes. So it was possible, but it became possible because our political leaders came up front. I think the challenge today is not only the necessity of the intelligentsia speaking up, but political parties coming up front and making this the issue. As Jawaharlal Nehru made the 1951 the critical issue, he made it into a referendum. That do we want a secular India or do we want the counterpart of Pakistan in India? So I think that I do not agree that, of course, it is true that what Tusharji was saying, that people want to watch all the horrors, etc., that we have considerably dehumanized a large part of our society, but it will be absolutely wrong to imagine that the bulk of Indian society has been dehumanized, that there is no scope for functioning. It is absolutely wrong. We have to approach that. Give them a chance. Let the let political parties come and go to the people, and you will be amazed that how much they're hankering for peace, for empathy, for ethics, for a more humane life, rather than hatred and butchery that is happening. So I am not, I'm not probably as old and wise as many others, but I'm not despondent. I think there is still enough fight left in our civilization. And I would like to end with this. Gandhiji's shift from a position that God is truth to truth is God. I think it tells us, and Gandhiji did not give up religion when he said truth is God. All that he did was he put religion in the right place. He stopped going to temples. He never visited a temple except to argue with the priests. He was a deep believer, but put truth above the misuse of religion. I think there is probably nobody else from whom we can learn more for India's situation than Gandhiji in all respects. How to protest, where to protest, and how to do it in a manner that we do not kill the golden goose itself, that we do not use the same instruments that the opposite side uses to try and make progress. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aditya. Now, just to conclude, before we enter into question and answer session, I invite Professor Vinod Mubaiji to take 4 or 5 minutes and conclude this. Mubaiji.
So much, Razi. Hi, it was inspiring to listen to Mridula Mukherjee, Aditya Mukherjee, Rajmohan Gandhi, and Tushar Gandhi, as well as Sunita. I would just like to emphasize or bring up 2 points here. One is that I'm myself a child of the partition. I was born in Lahore, and I was in 1st grade in Lahore when we were forced to leave the city. And I saw on both sides of what became an international border the horrors that took place at that time, as people referred to. And in December 47, we arrived in Delhi, and then the next month we had to witness the martyrdom assassination of Mahatma Gandhi, and it had such a big impact that my mother took myself and my elder brother all the way from 4 miles to walking to see Mahatma Gandhi's funeral. And I remember that very well, with the Gandhiji's body lying on the gun carriage, and Nehru and Patel, etc., Maulana Azad, I think, on the sides of it. So that had an impact on our lives. And I think, as Aditya Mukherjee pointed out, it had a very salutary, in effect, impact that just 3 years later, we were able to hold a free and fair election in which the votaries of the Hindutva crowd got a very small fraction of the votes. In fact, if I remember rightly, Congress won with a big majority, and the second party was the Communist Party, which is interesting in terms of seats and votes, etc. Now, when we come to this era, I think Tushar Gandhi has pointed out very, very clearly that the fact is that every use of religious identity for political ends is ending in barbarity right now, whether it is Hinduism, whether it is the fundamentalist Islam or fundamentalist Christianity. And we see that evidence in many countries around the world. In fact, what reminds one of India right now is a century ago of Nazi Germany and the othering of minorities there and the genocides that occurred. And it's very, very clear that just as the votaries of Hindutva in the 1930s, Golwalkar, Savarkar, etc., praised Nazi Germany for what it was doing, and that peculiar manifestation of majoritarianism that existed in that decade and what it did to minorities, we are witnessing a recurrence of that at this time in India. How we deal with it, there is hope, there is despair, there is all these emotions attached to it. And we hope that somehow this force gets dislodged in the next election and the fanatics wilt away or are overwhelmed by those who are not fanatic, who wish for a plural and secular India. But at the moment, it can just remain a hope for which, as Tushar said, we have to go out and act in the streets, whether people who are living in India do that, to what extent we do that in the diaspora. We are trying our little bit every now and then, and we hope to keep on doing it. Because as the poet Faiz Ahmed Faiz said, I'll translate from Urdu, हाँ तलखी अयाम अभी और बढ़ेगी, हाँ अहले सितम मशके सितम करते रहेंगे, मंजूर ये तलखी ये सितम हमको गवारा, दम है तो मुदावा आलम करते रहेंगे. The poisons of the age will continue to grow, tyrants will continue their tyranny. I acknowledge this tyranny and this grief. As long as I am alive, I will try to make it a better world. So I think with that hope, we are having these seminars and we will keep on doing what we can do. Thank you very much, Raji Saab, for inviting me to say a few words.
Thank you all. Thank you very much, Vinodji, and thank you all. It turned into a different kind of conversation. Nonetheless, it was far more fruitful this way. Now we are going to do a question and answer session. Before that, Faisal, show me. Okay, coming Saturday is going to be a far equally sensitive topic. It is on Kashmir. Silence and invisibilize the people inside Naya Kashmir. And the speaker is Anuradha Basin, who is the executive editor of Kashmir Times, the oldest English daily in Kashmir. And well, the introductory and concluding remarks will be given by Dr. Anjana Chatterjee, a very well-known activist here in the US diaspora, and quite well-known. No, Sunita knows her very well, I guess. So